Being aware of who we are, it's kind of a holy grail for everybody. Not just because it helps us make the big decisions like what career to pursue, what relationships, what to donate money to, but we make countless little decisions, moment after moment after moment. And getting clear about who you are can help. It also just feels good, You go through life and wondering what the world thinks of us, and so perhaps starting with some kind of a self-concept can help. So on this edition of How to Do Life, I will try to be of help in that regard. First of all, I want to say one thing I don't think is particularly a valid way to do it, and that is there are a variety of, quote, tests that are supposed to help you figure out who you are. The Myers-Briggs, which is notorious for its invalidity. Its predictive validity is poor. Its test-retest reliability is poor. There have been a number of experts who have said it's not much more valid than a horoscope. But there are some more widely regarded tests, like the Strong Interest Inventory, the differential aptitude test, and the like. And of course, there's a lot of informal ones that are free on the internet that, in the end, I think enable you to make less valid inferences than simply self-report. Because each of those tests is a step or more away from what your real experience is. It tries to fit you in boxes that don't necessarily fit. So what we're going to do here today is not going to focus on tests, but to focus on helping you self-report your own strengths, weaknesses, preferences, so that you'll have a better sense of who you are and how you want to proceed in the world. The most important thing, of course, as they say in horse racing, the best predictor of your future is the past. And so it's a useful idea to look at your past, not only your own experiences, and actually that's not a bad place to start. Why don't you, and feel free to stop this if it's a podcast or a video that you're watching, to stop this and make a list of the few project's probably the right word, that you undertook anywhere from childhood to today that came out well and in which you enjoyed the process. Make a list of them. 4, 5, 7 would be great. And then look for common threads. Those common threads are often very useful for helping your core self-identity. Now, the one disadvantage of that is it chains you to your past. What you want to do in the future may not be just what you succeeded at and enjoyed in the past. So don't treat this as the gospel. Treat it as a data point, the common threads that exist in the few accomplishments in your life that you enjoyed, the process as well as the outcome. Next, another aspect of track record that's useful is usually throughout, at various points in your life, you got some feedback. Now, some of it you want to blow off and you think it's completely off base, or you don't really trust the person. But very often, feedback from others can be helpful. The most useful often is if you're looking for self-concept that's going to result in pay, is to not rely on family and friends who tend to say nice things, but think about your attempts to get paid for your efforts. Who has paid you, and for what? They usually are not going to pay you unless you're pretty good at it. I particularly am thinking about people in the arts. There are a lot of people who pursue musical, performing arts or visual art, and their parents and their friends and also their teachers tend to be full of praise because, frankly, it's easier psychologically to praise somebody. It makes people feel good, even if it's not really true. And teachers are more likely to get you to continue to take lessons with them if you praise. And teachers generally tend to be positive. So be focused more not on who you're paying, for example, your teachers, your professors, etc., but on people who have paid you or would be paying you, is another useful tool for getting a sense of who you are in the world, at least as is externally valued. I'd like to mention a few core abilities that may also trigger thoughts on your own self-concept. So rate yourself excellent, good, fair, or poor, as well as whether you like using that skill, on the following. Are you a good explainer? Are you good at explaining things clearly and perhaps entertainingly? Excellent, good, fair, or poor. Are you a persuasive person? Are you able to persuade people normally to do your bidding or to agree with you? Excellent, good, fair, or poor. There are different kinds of people. One is, again, the aforementioned persuasive ability, but the other is somebody who's just sensitive to people's feelings. And they may not always accommodate their feelings, but at least they're aware of it, so that you're more likely to make the right decisions when you're dealing with people. It's a critical skill in much of life. Data. How good are you with quantitative data, whether it be spreadsheets or assays or statistics or accounting, or qualitative data, that is, reading articles and books, especially that require a fair amount of thinking, not just pop psych stuff. Hands-on tends to be divided into two components. There are people who like designing things hands-on, whether it be jewelry or furniture or engineering some electrical product. And then there are hands-on people who do better at repairing, whether they're robot repair people or car repair people or whatever. And so rate yourself excellent, good, fair, or poor on that. Then also look at how entrepreneurial are you. Have your efforts to come up with a good idea and then see it through to completion and with reasonable success. Would you rate yourself as excellent, good, fair, or poor? And the final ability I want to talk about is weird ones. Some of those are the most valuable because they're not so commonly held. I mean, there are a million people who are organized, detail-oriented, are verbal, they get along with people, but there are more weird abilities that you may have. And I'm not talking about doing a thumb wrestle, but are there other abilities you have that are unusual and rare? I'll just try to think of an example. Are you able to, you have a knack for, plants, being able to sense when a plant isn't doing well, but before it starts to die? Do you have a knack for calming people down? Anyway, think about what you might consider an unusual, or I might consider an unusual or even weird ability. The other category of self-assessment is your values. And this is really harder to be really honest with yourself about, but try. On a continuum from very altruistic to very selfish, if you're really honest, where are you on that continuum, and where would you like to be? On another continuum, competitive versus collaborative, where are you? The competitive people, they may mouth the words of kumbaya and teamwork and all of that, all in and together and all that, but deep down, it's about number one. Other people really are about kumbaya sharing. Where are you now, and where might you like to be? Materialism. The American way, the capitalist way, is very materialistic. He or she with the most toys wins. They will buy an expensive Mercedes, even though it breaks down more often, requires more servicing than a Toyota, for this vague thing, this ineffable thing called status or prestige. That's materialism. Other people live as simply as they can. Realize that they have many more degrees of freedom in terms of choosing their career and how generous they're going to be. If they're not materialists, they live in a modest place, most importantly, because housing is the biggest cost. They drive a modest car, if any car. They wear clothes for a long time. They're not fashionistas following the latest trends. They would just as soon get a cubic zirconium than a diamond. They would soon travel in a car vacation and stay in modest, motels or camp or whatever, rather than a flying vacation to Biarritz and stay in a 5-star hotel. But if you're being honest with yourself, how materialistic are you now? And how materialistic would you ideally like to aspire to? Another value, of course, that's important to some people is, are they cause-driven? Some people are all about the cause, save the planet, help to raise money to stop a disease that perhaps killed a loved one. Some people believe in education as the magic pill, and so they want to get involved in raising money or volunteering their time for education. Other people deep down are not very cause-driven. They're more about themselves and their family. On that continuum between kind of cause-driven and more self-driven, focused more on self, where are you? And there's this other thing that I wanted to share with you. And it's called mining your interiority. All of us have a series of thoughts that go through our heads throughout the day, moment to moment, and they can often reveal some interesting things. And I'm going to demonstrate one after we come back from a brief break. But I'll let you know you are listening to How to Do Life with Marty Nemko. Stay with us, we'll do that, and then I've got a bunch of other interesting stuff like other cool questions. Cool is the wrong word. Great questions to ask yourself that can help tease out your self-awareness, help you figure out who you are. Again, this is How to Do Life on KSFP. I am Marty Nemko. Welcome back to How to Do Life. I am Marty Nemko. Here is, as promised, we're talking about increasing your self-awareness. And one of the ways you can do that is to what I call mine your interiority. Every one of us does go through, we have a bunch of different thoughts that pop in and out of our head, even before we get out of bed in the morning. And what you're thinking may be more interesting than what you say in most conversation, and may be revelatory, revealing of some of your essence. I'm just going to give you an example. This is a person just getting up in the morning. Oh, I can't bear to get on the scale. Should I call in sick? I love coffee. Danish. No. Maybe. If I drink the coffee black, maybe I can have the Danish. I hate how biased the media is. I wish my grandfather would die already. I can't let myself think of that. I wonder what it would be like to stare at flowers for a whole day. Am I an imposter? We're having sex less often. I don't seem to care. Sometimes I don't like people at all. That ringing in my ears is getting louder. What's that about? I'm doing too much weed. I like weed. It's bad for me. Oh, I need to have some fun. I don't have the energy on the weekend to do more than vape while I'm watching TV. I vape too much. I should get out. I don't want to go to that party. I'm afraid to think I'm boring. I'm not boring. So there's an example of, the kind of free association that we associate with James Joyce's Ulysses and Mrs. Dalloway. I think that's Edith Wharton's book, Mrs. Dalloway, which is pretty just stream of consciousness that goes through what flitted in and outside of people's minds. And so, think about, you might just jot down on a memo pad or in your phone or whatever, that stream of consciousness, all the thoughts that pop into your head. And then if you maybe do it for a day or half a day, and then review it and see what that says about what really matters to you. It's going to be core to help your self-awareness. Now, I want to, as I promised you, here are some, well, I guess before we get to, here are some questions that you might just think about right now. Or, I really am a big believer in journaling. If you keep a journal, it's very empowering because, very often people know best what's best for them rather than go to some counselor or whatever or advisor who's giving them advice. And so you might want to journal about your answers to any of these questions, or simply just think about it as I ask them. I'll leave a few seconds in between each question so you have a little time to think about it. What are you thinking about these days? And you might want to just write these down, either the questions and or the answers. I'll repeat them. I think I'll repeat them twice. So what are you thinking about these days? Is there something you're looking forward to? Is there something you're looking forward to? Tell your life story in a few minutes. Tell your life story in a few minutes. Tell a story about yourself, whether a true one or a fantasy. Tell a story about yourself, true or fantasy. What's been your happiest moment and your saddest moment? What's been your happiest moment and your saddest moment? What do you most hope for? What do you most hope for? What makes you angriest? What makes you angriest? If you didn't care what anyone thought, what would you do? If you didn't care what anyone thought, what would you do? What do you give a damn about? What do you give a damn about? What do you want? What do you really want? So I think also what I want to do is to, sometimes it helps trigger thoughts to hear some concrete examples. So to do that, I think it's most authentic if I do it for myself. So I'm going to go over each of these questions, and I'm going to give you my honest answers to every one of them. And that will also be a third chance for you to hear the question and give you a shot at it. So, what are you thinking about these days? I'm thinking about my weight. I'm pretty good now. I want to kind of stay there, but I have to be pretty careful. So it's like the endless struggle that I have to keep my weight because I'm getting older. I'll be 70 years old in June. And so I want to, I realize it gets more and more important to keep your weight as you get older. So that's the first thing that pops to my mind. And by the way, the things that pop to your mind first are often the most valid. So next question is there something I'm looking forward to? Honestly, the first thing that popped to my mind is I'm looking forward to seeing my wife tonight. We like playing with the dog, playing gin. We'll probably watch some movie on Amazon Instant Video or Netflix. And again, that says something about me. Very similar. We might play gin rummy. We have very quiet. I'm a very, very quiet person by nature, and I like simple pleasures. Not very social outside my family. So those are the kind of core values. Remember, we're talking here about self-awareness. Your honest answers to those kind of questions can tease out what what you're really like at your core, and thereby your self-assessment, your self-awareness tends to be far more valid than what you can get out of the tests like the Myers-Briggs that I disparaged earlier. Another question is, tell your life story in a few minutes. I'm clearly not going to do that now, but I'll take 30 seconds or so to tell you signature moments in my life. First memory I have was getting beaten up a lot as a kid because I was verbally aggressive and physically wimpy. Next thought I had was the privilege of playing the piano at elementary school graduation, and I was not liked as a kid. I wasn't very social, so I was so excited to get to do that. I didn't have any sense of perspective. I ended up playing a second song, and the teacher pulled me away because I was only supposed to play one song. Let's see. Next one is an example of my life, so I'm going to really skip ahead to things. I have fond memories of my public speaking. I'm not going to list them because it would seem like I'm bragging, but I've done a lot of public speaking, and keynote speeches are really exciting for me. My favorite thing I probably ever did was a commencement address at Columbia College in Chicago. That's kind of fun. I'll stop there with that. But the next question is, tell a story about yourself, true or fantasy. And I'm going to do this. Well, this is important. I'm going to tell a little fantasy story, because your fantasy story, whatever comes out of you, and I have no idea what I'm going to say, really, but the fantasy story ends up revealing some things about you that are either real or aspirational or whatever, but it can't hurt. Again, everything I'm asking you to do here for self-awareness, it has no side effects. These are all kind of fun in a way. So, fantasy. I'm going to kind of present a movie that would start now as I'm approaching my 70th birthday. What would happen? Well, the fantasy, I would tell a fantasy story. Fantasy is that somebody watches this video and realizes that what I really am is the Dr. Phil of career and life, and gets me to do a TV show on PBS. And then as a result of that, I make a lot of money, and because I'm not poor, I give it all to a charity that I really like, which would be gifted kids education in a blue-collar school where parents can't afford to do it by themselves, but they're not so beset by the constellation of problems that the very poor have. So then I would end up in donating that to the school. I would kind of be adopting the school, and I would have a mentee, a kid who was a gifted kid who had very little income, maybe a single parent, and I would spend some time. I would give talks at the school about career, about the meaning of life, all that stuff. I'll stop there. So that gives you an example. It's not, none of that's real, except that I do, donate some money to gifted kids. But make up a story about yourself. Another example. Next question. These are the mining your interiority questions in an attempt to, they're not really, in an attempt to identify what makes you you. My happiest and saddest moment. As silly as it sounds, my happiest moments are related to what comes to my mind are my doggie. I've had dogs my whole life. Happiest moments are getting my doggie and loving my doggies, hugging them. Saddest moments really are, even though I was very sad when my parents died, I wasn't pounding the walls like I did when I lost my dogs. It's very hard. It's a very uncomplicated love, the love of dogs. Not only is it unconditional acceptance. It's just very uncomplicated. There's no hidden agendas. And again, see how that's revelatory about how important dogs are in my life. And it might even be something intellectually I'm well aware that giving to charity that help people net is probably a wiser thing than giving to dogs, but emotionally I'm somehow connected to the simplicity of dogs, especially since I've never had a lot of friends. I'm a little, I don't want to be self-absorbed here, but I've got weaknesses in my interaction style that make me not well liked. So that's made me closer to my doggie. What do I most hope for? The first thing that comes to mind, of course, is world peace. But what do I most hope for, Frank? To be honest, selfishly, I just want to stay healthy. I'm grateful I still have my mind and my physical health. Just had my annual physical, and that's important. Next question was, what makes me angriest? That's frankly, it's media bias. I think the media has a near sacred responsibility to present a wide range of responsibly held ideas. But there is this sense that even though most people in the media have very little real-world experience, they've lived in the bubble in their college majors and then straight into the bubble world of journalism, and they have this sense of, despite their limited real-world experience, they have this sense of hubris that they know it all and are willing to be consciously or unconsciously very biased in their reporting. There is wisdom that exists across the spectrum, and it unfortunately is too often truncated. The censorship today is pretty horrible. Views that don't comport with the, let's call it the orthodoxy, get censored or censured pretty heavily. I know plenty of people who have lost their jobs because they were not politically correct. That's not a formula for a good society. I am a believer in the free and open marketplace of ideas. So anyway, see how this is also revelatory of a core value of mine, What's something that makes you angry? That was in response to the question, what makes you angriest? The next question is, if you didn't care what anyone thought, what would you do? Well, I can say it this way, and as crazy as it sounds, I have a PhD from Berkeley, but looking back, I would have dropped out of high school. I love learning, and I'm very self-motivated, so I don't need school and the structure of school to learn. I would drop out. I would learn by reading. In today's era, I would take little courses. I'd watch a lot of YouTube videos, instructional, but I would take little online courses that have all these reader reviews, user reviews, so I can curate and take the best ones. And then to solidify my learning, I would start writing. And I would just start writing and, posting them on a blog, get knowledgeable enough about social media that I was able to promote whatever I wrote. And might even, because I play the piano, and it sounds crazy, for fun, even though it's totally unconventional, I would probably take my keyboard out to the street, to a busy street near a train station, and I would be playing the piano, which I do, probably take requests, but also hand out just Xeroxed copies, duplicated copies of the articles I'm proudest of. And that would make me feel like I was living a life pretty well led. That's what I would do if I didn't care what anybody thinks. And again, look at the power of that question. I'm not saying that every one of these questions is going to be powerful for you, but pretty darn good. What do I give a damn about is the next question. As I said, I give a damn about the media's nearly sacred responsibility to present the full range of responsibly held views and not be such heavy censors, which they are currently. I also give a damn about merit. I'm well aware that race, gender, sexual orientation, ageism, sexism, homophobia, all of those are factors, and capitalism has its weaknesses. But ultimately, I believe that too much focus on those as opposed to merit is a net negative. So I give a damn about having the best person for the job, for the slot in graduate school, for whatever, for resources given by the government, be the people with the greatest potential to profit, independent of their race, gender, sexual orientation, age. I want fairness based on merit. I certainly don't want anybody prejudiced against on those factors, but I'm very interested in having people judged and resources allocated based on fairness. And then the final question that I had asked was, what do you want? What do you really want? I want to be able to, frankly, at this point, I just want to be able to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm well aware that people of my age start to have problems, health problems, and I'm grateful for every day when I wake up that I'm still, physically and mentally solid. So what I really want is just to be able to continue doing this as long as I can, because I'm grateful for the life I do have. So now, importantly, it's all about you. So I hope that you will perhaps re-listen to this or rewatch it if you're watching it on YouTube, or re-listen to it if it's the podcast, to try to help identify who you are, because it can really make a big difference in all the decisions you make, whether it be career, relationships, or the millions of little decisions that we get to make. In any event, I like to end every show with the following. We find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those who don't. I am Marty Nemko.